What's up, Planeswalkers? 36 back with some more Magic the Gathering. Not arena, but discussion. Today I'm going to be going over the Monday, the 23rd, previews for Commander 2018. I'm still not entirely sure how exactly I want to do these types of videos in terms of capturing the video, but this is how I'm doing it. If you are wondering, I use mythicspoiler.com to view all of my spoilery needs. It takes a little while for them to update. If I'm like super curious, I'll go to the Magic TCG subreddit. For this, it's actually better to go to the Commander subreddit because there's a little bit more directed discussion. But if you just want a nice view of things, you can go to Mythic Spoiler. The audio that I'm using for this is just a bunch of Duels of the Planeswalkers audio that's playing on loop on like YouTube or something. So that's that. With all that, let's start talking about some cards. So, Geode Golem, 5 mana, 5/3 trample. When it deals combat damage to a player, you can cast your commander from the command zone without paying its cost. So, this has pretty interesting implications with some higher cost generals. Notably, you can cheat out, quote unquote, some of the like bigger colorless ones. For example, the Eldrazi. The problem is that it has 3 toughness and it just dies to things. As a 5 mana investment, I've seen a lot of people talk about how this card is probably going to become a staple, but I'm not seeing it. And the main reason I'm not seeing it is, like, sure, it gets around the commander tax by making it so you only have to pay the tax. As you see, you still have to pay additional costs. So I'm glad that they had that rules text in there. But it's a 5/3 that has to deal damage to a player, and once you're in the point of the game where you're trying to do that, to cheat out your commander a little early, I just don't think that this creature is going to be able to survive very well. I mean, I guess it kind of forces players who may otherwise not be interacting with the board to actually care and do something, or else you can just attack them. But I just don't see this card being fantastic. Against the Eldrazi, you do get cast triggers unless it says cast from hand. I've seen some people talk about running this with Phage the Untouchable. Obviously, you still have to deal with her trigger, but this way at least you don't have to like wait even more turns because you can cast her for free, and then you have mana up to Heroic Reversal or whatever that new card from Battle Bond is. That time stop artifact, you can do those types of things. So, I mean, I think it has its niches, not sure. But I don't think it's going to be as much of a staple as people are saying it. Or I could just be undervaluing this card a lot, and undervaluing the fact that you get to cast your commander for free. But I feel like Command Beacon does a similar thing, that's a little bit easier to run because it's just one of your land slots. Obviously, there are plenty of ways to get back creatures and artifacts, probably more than there are to get back lands, but I just feel like this card, for its cost and toughness, just doesn't impact the board enough. It's not strong enough by itself to see play, I don't think. I could be wrong, but not entirely sure. Next up, we look at Coveted Jewel. Excuse me. It's a 6 mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards. Pretty good. You know, it's a nice 6 mana draw spell. That's what? It's not concentrate. I don't know, it's something. I think there's a 6 mana blue card that draws 3 cards. I'm a scrub. Also taps to add 3 of any one color. So, you know, you have Gilded Lotus plus a draw card for 1 more mana. Seems really good. How is this not a staple? Whenever 1 or more creatures an opponent control attacks you and aren't blocked, that player draws 3 cards and gains control of the Coveted Jewel and tap it. So essentially, this is very similar to, and I think they have it here. Yeah, the Monarchy. And I really like the Thesaurus on Mythic Spoiler. That's one of the great things about Mythic Spoiler, is you can see kind of what new cards are similar to other cards. So this card is similar to the Monarchy in that people can take it from you. And having your opponents draw 3 cards and get some more mana just by attacking you and not even dealing damage, just that they're unblocked. Right. So even if you have a fog effect, they take this card. I think I'm not sure this is great. It might be really good in like a weenie strategy, right? Like a go wide token deck, especially one that's like base white, because white historically has had a little bit of trouble maintaining, you know, card advantage. They don't really need the mana as much, but the fact that you are able to get those immediate 3 cards, I think, is helpful in a white go wide strategy, and you will likely have blockers to deal with your opponent's cards. I thought that was ringing in the background. I guess it was just the music. I'm not sure that this card is going to be a staple. I think it will slot in nicely to decks that are going to be going wide and want to be having a lot of blockers. But this card doesn't really go into the types of decks where you want to just draw the card, have the mana, and sit back on, you know, rest on your laurels and try to like control the board otherwise. I mean, obviously this works really well with board wipes, but if you're playing against a red opponent who probably has haste, you just refilled their hand and been allowed them to replay that commander that you've killed 3 or 4 times, right? So I think this is a good card, but I think this is actually the type of card that I like seeing from them, right? Whenever they do these commander products, I do get a little worried that they're printing cards explicitly for commander that are like super strong, that are just going to slot into like every deck. I mean, I've been playing commander since it was called E.D.H. I still, I think, from sometimes call it E.D.H, just like as a slip, but I remember, you know, the olden days where like you were playing just kind of random cards, and now there are so many cards that are just staples of the format that I feel like a lot of cards get slept on, and it's kind of sad. And you know, the commander precons do sort of push some cards off to the fringe, and I think this card won't do that. I think this card will slot into some decks where it is good but not insane, and I think it's good but not insane to the point that it isn't going to be a staple. It's just going to be a good card that can give these decks that are creature decks a little bit more fuel. Ew, excuse me. Saheeli's directive is X triple red, X red, 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 for a sorcery with Improvise, which is pretty good. Reveal the top X cards of your library. You may put any number of artifact cards with converted mana cost X or less from among them onto the battlefield, then put all cards revealed this way that weren't put onto the battlefield into your graveyard. So let's start off with the really obvious comparison. This is the Artifact Genesis wave, right? This is what this is. And it has Improvise, which is primo. So your artifacts you already have on the field help this. You're playing these artifacts, so you're probably you're playing red, possibly mono red, maybe red blue with something else, but you're playing an artifact deck, right? So a lot of your artifacts are probably producing a lot of mana, right? I can see this really easily being an X for like 10, right? Excuse me. And the fact that, so red doesn't have a lot of, you know, like graveyard recursion. There are artifact ones, but obviously this gives you the artifacts. But the fact that it's put in your graveyard and not on the bottom of your battlefield kind of means that like you can even put, knowing this, you can put in cards with like flashback. Cards that care about being in the graveyard, cards that care about getting things from the graveyard. So I mean that is something to consider. The graveyard is a resource. Now back to the main point of this card. Luckily it's a sorcery. Obviously if this was an instant it'd be broken as heck. I do like that it was 3 red, just to make sure that you have to have some investment in red to play this. You can't just be playing this in like a Jeskai deck that isn't, you know, super tuned and be able to cast this consistently. But I mean it's an Artifact Genesis wave, right? You're gonna put this in your artifact decks. You're gonna love it. You're gonna get X equals 10. You're gonna get a bunch of bombs, and you're gonna murder your opponent with it. This is a redundant way to get some nice redundant combo pieces. If you're looking to just flood the board with very powerful artifacts, like even just artifact creatures, right? Like you can be running this in a strong artifact creature deck. You know, you have Wormcoil Engine, Steel Hellkite, Turbine? No. Big Murball, I don't remember the name. But, you know, you're playing in a deck with all of those. You can do this X equals 7, right? And you can potentially just hit like 3 or 4 pretty good artifact creatures, give 1 or 2 of them haste, and you know, you have a decent turn. And since you're playing a red base artifact deck, you're going to have acceleration, right? Like those decks just play a ton of mana rocks. And you can power this out, you know, turn 4, turn 5, or something really stupid like that. And I think this card is very similar to Genesis Wave in that it'll go into the decks that can abuse it, and those decks will have, I think, really bomby turns, really explosive turns, because of this card existing. And I think it's cool. I think it's cool that Wizards continues to reflavor cards into different archetypes. I think that's awesome. Next up, we have Retrofitter Foundry. Very interesting card. So I misread this card so frequently when I first read it. So it's a 1 generic mana artifact. Pay 3 mana, untap it. Okay, so obviously they want us to do some multiple things with this. 2 mana and tap, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. For some reason, I then skipped all the way to the last thing, and I was like, oh, you tell me for what, 5 mana I can just like make 4/4s every turn? No. Then you have 1 generic and tap, sacrifice a servo, create a 1/1 Thopter token with flying. Then tap it, sacrifice a Thopter, create a 4/4 construct. So obviously this wants to slot into a deck that is going to be creating incidental Thopters anyway, because then you can skip the whole servo nonsense, go straight into making 4/4s all day long. Obviously the 4/4s don't have flying, which is fair. You know, you have to make a decision. Do you want a flying blocker or an evasive attacker, or do you want, you know, a little beefier of a card? But I mean, the fact that this is just 1 mana, I think is pretty good, because, you know, it works towards the Improvise card we just talked about, in that you can just play it early, and you can start accruing value out of it. Maybe you're playing this in a more combo, well, maybe not combo, but, you know, a more control-y deck that isn't wanting to tap out on their turn every turn. You know, maybe they're playing a bunch of instants. Maybe they counter spells. Maybe have like fact or fiction type cards. Then you can just, you know, rest upon your laurels, and if your opponents do nothing, you can make a servo. You can make a Thopter. You can make a 4/4 construct. You know, this slots in really well with something like Kirkesh, where you're going to be able to get multiple triggers, right? Paying 3 mana to untap it, and then you use Kirkesh's ability, pay 1 more mana, and you get 2 untapped triggers, and then you activate it in response, and you'll be able to skip some steps. I think this is a very powerful card in those artifact decks. This one I think might be a staple, but I don't actually play the artifact decks. I'm more of an enchantment guy. Technically, I'm more of a play zombies and kill you guy, but that's besides the point. But I think that this is going to be a very strong card in those artifact strategies. Next up, we have a Blast from the Past. Varchild's back. Betrayer of Keldor. I don't know how to pronounce that, okay. I have no idea if that's a... I don't know if Varchild's a guy or a girl, so I'm just going to say they. They cost 2 and a red. Or, yeah, 2R. 2 and a red. For a 3/3. It's decent stats. Whenever Varchild deals combat damage to a player, so it does have to get through, has no inbuilt evasion, so you're probably going to need to be running this as maybe some sort of Voltron deck that gives Varchild some sort of evasion. It is a knight, which is interesting. That player creates that many 1/1 red survivor tokens. Wait, you're giving your opponent cards? Why would you want to do that? Survivors your opponent control can't block, and they can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. So this is kind of sowing the seeds of hatred amongst the other players, right? They can't hurt you, and they can't block from you. So they have to use them to attack other players. That's all they're good for. Or you can sack them and stuff as well, but... Yeah. When Varchild leaves, gain control of all soldiers. So if your opponent wants to get rid of your Varchild, and it's not when they die, it's when they leave. So, Swords to Plowshares, I'll put it back in the command zone. Thanks for all of these survivors. Obviously a Wrath doesn't work, but they want to do anything to Varchild that removes from the battlefield. You can blink this card. However, red, not known for its blink. I don't see why you would play... I don't really see a deck that would run red and to be a blink deck. But theoretically, you can blink your own card. Get back some survivors, I guess. I think the biggest weakness of this card is that it doesn't have inbuilt evasion. So you do have to build around that. You know, things like Whisper Soak Cloak, running Rogue's Passage, giving them flying, something like that. I think that's the way you're going to be able to get the survivors. And then you have to then try and get Varchild killed or removed in some other way. And then the payoff for that is just having survivors. So I'm not actually sure that this card is strong enough to see play at all. But I do like that they are going to be printed cards that aren't just obviously powerful cards. Now, they're very well. Maybe something I'm missing here, right? But I don't think so. I think this card is an interesting build-around. I think that's pretty much it. And I think that's fun, right? I like build-around generals. Next up is Atlas Infini. It's a 2-mana artifact. I was gonna... So I speak French. At least a little. And I was going to read this off in French. And then I realized I would make a fool of myself with my trash pronunciations. I'm not cagey about what my real name is. Last name is Thibault. It's a French name. But I'm not gonna embarrass myself by reading in French. 2 and tap to draw a card. Activate this ability only if you control at least 3 lands with the same name. This is a good card. I'm fairly certain that this is a fantastic card, specifically for white decks. And I guess red decks. Red decks usually play a lot of artifacts as well anyway, and those artifacts will draw cards. But I think where this shines is going to be mono white decks, right? White has, as I said earlier, they had a problem with being able to maintain drawing cards, maintain hand advantage. Obviously, their cards are relatively powerful, so they can still have kind of pseudo card advantage just by having strong cards. But I think this will keep white in the game, and white usually wants to be playing black as well, but black has other ways to draw cards. But white likes having a lot of planes. They have a lot of planes matter cards. You know, you have Endless Horizons, you have Emiri the Sky Ruin, right? You have I think white more than any other card or any other monocolored deck plays Stratascythe, things like that. So I think this is going to be a strong card in white. I'm definitely going to try it out in my 8.5 Tails deck because that deck does kind of have a few problems maintaining cards in hand. You know, it's kind of a Death and Taxes style E.D.H deck, and I'm, you know, vomiting out my hand, being a nuisance to all of my opponents, and, you know, slowly I'm being whittled down by the blue, black, and green decks. So I think this is a strong card. This actually might just be a staple, even if you're not running a monocolor deck. You know, this is still good in dual color decks. I don't think it's too hard to have 3 lands with the same name. I am happy that they're kind of incentivizing running fewer cards. I've seen a lot of the top end decks being, you know, these 3-color, 4-color decks. So I am glad that there's a little bit more incentive to run monocolor decks. I think monocolor decks are fun. They're cool. I like having building restrictions, so I look forward to Atlas. And we get to the Planeswalkers. I talked a little bit about them in yesterday's video, or wait, no. So I recorded the gameplay yesterday, but it's today that I'm recording this. So for me it was yesterday, for you it's today. Whatever. I talked about these in the Bolas deck gameplay. So I'm just going to touch on them a little bit. 2 blue-red, 4 loyalty Planeswalker, 2 pluses, 1 minus. The minus is pretty good. You know, if you are able to use Saheeli's, what the heck is this card called? Saheeli's Directive into her -7, you know, that's going to be very strong. You can make a servo, which helps with the 1-mana artifact. You can make your non-artifact spells cost less, although I actually think that ability is not going to be activated very frequently, just because of the fact that, as I said, if you're playing an artifact deck, you probably are running a lot of mana rocks anyway. So I'm not sure, but the fact that they're both pluses, you know, she does still protect herself, you know, comes down, makes a 1/1, can block. And you can just keep plussing until you're able to -7. So I think she'll be a fine card. I think she is probably what the blue-red artifact players were looking for. Obviously, some people would rather just stick with Kurkesh. Some people would rather stick with Joyra, but I think she's a good contender. I don't think she pushes out those other players. You know, I think if you want a combo, it's still probably better for Joyra. And I think if you want to not play blue, Saheeli is still not Saheeli, Kurkesh is still a better choice, obviously, because Saheeli is blue. But I think Saheeli is going to slot in nicely as kind of a value artifact deck, right? Kurkesh, I think, is a little bit more explosive. Joyra is a little bit more combo oriented, and I think Saheeli will fit in really nicely as just a I'm going to accrue value with my artifacts type deck. So next up is Aminatu, and I still just cannot pronounce that name. White, blue, black for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker. +1, -1, -6. I'm not sure. Obviously, they don't make as many new cards for the commander sets as I think they possibly could. But when I was thinking about this card, and I don't think I got to it in the video earlier, I'm not sure how many good payoffs there are for library manipulation. Now, obviously, we haven't seen the full deck list yet, but I do wonder how strong it is to manipulate the top of your deck. Yeah, I mean, I just don't know. I like that they gave her some incidental bounce ability in the -1. Her -6 is just strange. Like this card, I think the other decks are a little bit more focused, or the other planeswalkers are a little bit more focused, and her abilities do seem a little everywhere. And I think that's because they realize that there's just not as much deck manipulation as they might want, right? Like the plus ability is deck manipulation, the minus ability is flicker, and then the -6 is just strange chaos, essentially. Obviously, the -6 and the -1 work together because you can -6 and then -1 to get some of your stuff back. I kind of wish the minus and the plus abilities were flipped, because after a -6, you're going to want to be using that -1 ability, and obviously, like, it would be a stronger card like that. But having the generic draw card be the minus, I think, is fine, because early on you can just get advantage from it, and I think people are fine doing a -1 to get advantage of drawing a card, even though it's only a pseudo draw because you do have to put a card back on. But it doesn't flow as well, because you're going to want a -6, and then you can't -1 as easily in order to get your stuff back. And I guess that's not the play pattern they were going for. I'm not sure. I think of all of the decks, I'm the most apprehensive about this one, because I think deck manipulation is a tough sell for me, in terms of how many cards you're actually going to realistically get a payoff from. So I'm kind of holding this one the farthest away from me, and I'm curious to see how they do it. I would love to see it work, but I feel like they're probably going to make the deck a little bit thin on just the deck order matters cards, just because I don't see many things that care about that. Estrid the Masked is 1 green, white, blue, 1 and a Bant for a 3 loyalty planeswalker, +2, untap and enchant permanent. As I said in the earlier video, this hits lands, right? This is an enchanted permanent, and it also, for what it's worth, it's not just your stuff, so I don't know why that would matter. But I mean, it's in prime enchantment colors. It's any enchanted permanent, right? You could do something dumb like put Quiet Disrepair. I think that's what it is. It's a 1 and a green enchantment that enchants I think an artifact or an enchantment. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you can either destroy it or gain like 2 life, right? So you can do that, and then put this put Quiet Disrepair onto like the Chain Veil or something dumb, and then have Estrid out, and you can plus, and then untap your lands that are enchanted, right? Oh, yeah, okay, it does say each. Okay, I thought it said target for a second. So you enchant a few lands with enchantments, and then you enchant the Chain Veil, and you can just get her up to essentially an infinite amount, right? Like you untap a land that has like Unbridled Growth, Gift of Paradise, and one other. I know there's another one. There's plenty actually. I just can't think of any. What, Utopia Sprawl? Let's go with that. So that's 4 mana right there. Then you enchant the Chain Veil, and then you just keep +2ing until you -7. Right, and you just do that, and you have an arbitrarily large Estrid. I think that's hilarious. Like, Estrid, I think, is going to be the deck that I experiment the most with. I think she's hilarious and cool, because there are so many enchantments that enchant not just creatures, and I think that's really cool. I think that's where Estrid's going to shine, is the auras that are enchanting non-creature things. I'm sure there are other like offensive enchantments that you're going to want to put on your opponent's creatures that do something when untapped. I just don't know them. I do like that Estrid is different from the other enchantment cards that we know. The other aura cards, right? Because she definitely incentivizes playing auras, which the other enchantment magic cards kind of incentivize playing auras for Voltron strategies. She also doesn't incentivize playing non-auras, right? So those are like the prison style decks, right? In the Daxos, I play a lot of like leave me alone enchantments, get me advantage enchantments, right? These aren't auras because auras are not going to be as strong for me. But Estrid is like, yeah, I'm gonna throw some auras on things. Things will die, sure, whatever. And transitioning to the next point, things will die. The -1 means that you could even enchant one of your enchantments. Let me just double check. Do another. Yeah. So you could enchant one of your auras just to help it not die because it gives totem armor. And I think that's really awesome that they've decided, hey, totem armor is totally fine just to give to a thing in a random kind of throwaway card, right? So I'm super excited about Estrid, and the -7 is obviously like hilariously awesome. It's just like a you dump some things in your graveyard and you get some random selection of enchantments. I think that's really cool. I'm super excited about Estrid, just because of the stupid possibilities that I don't even think of because I'm not like a Johnny, but not a Johnny the Planeswalker, a Johnny the demographic, whatever. I'm super excited for Estrid. And last but not least, as I think I said like verbatim, Lord Windgrace. He is the Jund. This is probably my second most excited. So in order, I think it's Estrid, then Windgrace, and then like a huge gap, and then Aminatu, and then Seekly. I'm just not an artifact guy. It is what it is. I'm a big Jund guy though. And Lord Windgrace cares about lands and stuff, and I think that's really cool. He also is the one with the highest starting loyalty. I think he's also the one with the highest cost. We have what? 3, 2 4s, and a 5. Yeah. So 2 black, red, green, 2 and a Jund for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. +2, discard a card, then draw a card. If a land was discarded, draw an additional card. That is so good. Right. Sure, it's discarding first, but you don't care because you get rid of the worst card in your hand. Maybe you get something better. If you put a land in, you get to draw 2 cards. Obviously, you're going to be playing Life from the Loam in this deck, right? So on the second draw, you just go ahead and dredge back that Life from the Loam, right? The possibilities with Windgrace, I think, they're real. I think it's really cool. Also, we have a Panther Planeswalker. That's dope. Lord Windgrace is a really cool character, and I'm sad that he didn't talk about him in the Magic story for Dominaria, because I believe when he died, it was said that his essence permeated Urborg, right? He was still there in spirit, and I thought that would have been really cool if while they were dredging through the swamps, maybe they like spoke to Windgrace when they went through the Spirit Village, and Windgrace was like, "Yo, I tell you where the Panther Warriors were," like because they used a battleground of Panther Warriors in the story. Spoiler alert if you haven't read it. And it would have been awesome to have Lord Windgrace mentioned in some way. You know, he died a long time ago, sure, but he's still an awesome character. And they used Panther Warriors in Urborg. They could have just had a nod to Windgrace somewhere. And if I missed it, let me know, but I'm pretty sure I didn't, because I would have looked out for Windgrace. Anyway, -3, get some land cards back from the graveyard to the battlefield. I mean, usually I'm not a fan of, like, dumb land destruction. It's not dry. I have land destruction in certain decks, depending on the goal of the deck. But, I mean, it's real nice to have a Strip Mine Wasteland back, blow up two annoying lands, -3, blow up 2 annoying lands, right? Like, it's pretty good. Luckily, they did balance it out, make sure you can't just play it -3, -3, right? So you are going to have to +2 at least once, but I really like how his abilities are balanced. I really like the numbers that they put on them. And -11, as I said last time, I love Violent Ultimatum so much. 7 mana, just destroy 3 permanents. Just get them off the field. Any 3 you want. This is -11. Destroy up to 6. You don't even, if you don't have 6 targets, you don't have to like not be able to use the card. Up to 6. Then create 6 2/2 warriors with Forest Walk. It's so good. You can choose to destroy nothing and your minus 11 still gets you 12 power worth of guys. I love this card. I do love Astrid a little bit more because I think she's more build aroundy, and I do love. Well, Windgrace is build around too. I don't know. They're both awesome. They're both fantastic cards. I really love the designs of both of them. Not saying I dislike the designs of the others, but Lord Windgrace is he's top. Next up, a land. Cool. I like when they put lands in commander products. They need to make sure they keep reprinting commander product lands just so they don't get super expensive, but whatever. Forge of Heroes, add a colors, sure. Choose target commander that entered the battlefield this turn. So it does target. So if your commander has Shroud, get Shrek'd. Put a 1/1 counter on it if it's a creature, and a loyalty counter if it's a planeswalker. So that's cool. So it kind of buffs up your commanders. Obviously for planeswalker heroes, I think, or heroes, oh my gosh. I'm not playing Heroes of the Storm right now. For planeswalker commanders, this is probably a little bit better, just because I think a loyalty counter is a little bit more valuable than a +1/+1 counter on a creature. But you know, if I'm playing Mael, for example, I can make Mael a little bit less likely to die. There's someone in my play group who plays Lightning Bolt in a lot of his decks. People have said you don't put Lightning Bolt in your commander deck. Lightning Bolt kills things. Lightning Bolt kills things. It kills really important ability creatures like my Mael. So having her get out of range of some of these smaller damage things is kind of important, you know. This can slot in pretty easily to any deck that cares about casting their commander. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a solid card. Luckily, it's not strong. I don't think it's strong enough to become a staple, especially in those decks that don't care as much about their commander. But you know, in decks like Mael, in decks like Gisa, I'm kind of only naming the decks that I own because, well, that's my experience. In those decks, you're gonna be able to play the cards and have them die to fewer things, and I think that's important. Obviously, in the Planeswalker decks, you can do dumb loyalty shenanigans. You know, if you have like Doubling Season, this is good. This with Rayhan, one of the partner commanders, is decent because you do get that extra counter. If you have a 6 power creature, putting a counter on it means that it's a 3-hit instead of a 4-hit for commander damage. So I think it's a good card. I think in general it's not going to be a staple, but it's going to see play. I think it's going to see play. Brutaclad Telcor Engineer. 4 blue-red, 4 and is it? For a 4/4 Artificer. This card is not a Lord, or is not a Myr. I don't care if Mark Rosewater says it's supposed to be Myr. He said explicitly that they're modeled after Myrmidons. They're not Myrmidons, they're Myrmidons, so they're Myr. I don't care what he says. But this is not a Myr. And I understand that when things get Phyrexianized, or completed, spelled with an A, they lose their race, essentially. The Phyrexians don't care about who you were. You are now a part of the great orthodoxy, or at least those who follow Elish Norn. I don't care, though. People have been asking for a legendary Myr. Why not just give it to them? Who cares about the Artificer type? Like, there are a few cards in Kaladesh that care about Artificers. But people have been... If people weren't asking for a legendary Myr, I think this card would be fine. I haven't even talked about the card yet. But people were asking for it. I was not one of those people. I don't technically care. I just like that it's a Phyrexian card. What sucks is that those people got a card that isn't what they wanted. Like, but it's so close. It's so close. Anyway, whatever, regardless. Creature tokens you control have haste. That's cool. A little strange in blue-red, but there are some decent cards. You know, elemental 3/1 elementals get made. 2/2 flying drakes get made. You know, things like that. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 2/1 blue Myr artifact creature token. Then you may choose a token you control. If you do, each other token you control becomes a copy of that token. So I don't think... So red gets things that make a dragon token. Excuse me for a second. Red does make things that are like dragon tokens, maybe larger elementals like 4/4s. But in general, I don't think blue-red has access to the large tokens. Those are usually in green and to a lesser extent white. So I think what what people are going to try and do are make token copies of non-creature artifacts. And I think this card is another one of those sleeper Johnny cards. I think this card is actually going to be better in a deck that doesn't care about creature tokens. It's going to be a deck that cares about getting artifact, non-creature artifacts copied, cloned, and then do that a ton. And then have hilarity ensue. So this card, as I said, I'm not an artifact guy. This card, not for me. And that's fine. I think this card could be insane. I'm just not entirely sure. If you guys, if someone has an idea of like how to break this card, let me know in the comments. Because I'm interested in what this card can do. I'm just, never going to play it. I'm just upset that it's not a Mer. Treasure Nabber. First things first, he's holding a Soul Ring. I'm pretty sure there's like a Mana Crypt in the background. That might be an Everflowing Chalice, but it doesn't look filigreed enough. These maybe are baubles. These are maybe like signets or moxes or something. Dude's got mana artifacts, and I think that's cool. I like when they have artists do that. 2 and a red for a 3/2. Whenever an opponent taps an artifact for mana, take it until the end of your next turn. That is hilarious. So it only takes mana artifacts. It doesn't take other artifacts. It's just artifacts that make mana. You get to steal it from them until the end of your next turn. So there are a few things that I thought about for this card. One is you play it with Hellkite Tyrant, I think. That's the one where if you control a certain number of artifacts, you win the game. It's pretty hilarious. Another one is you play Zedru. You take their stuff and then give it to someone else. Because you won't have control of it anymore. I'm fairly certain that they don't get it back. Now, I could be wrong. And this won't help you with Zedru, so it's not like technically even good for you. It's just funny. If I'm wrong, that'll be disappointing. You can do things with like Bazaar Trader. So you get an artifact. I wonder if Bazaar Trader's on here actually. No, it's not. Oh, Hellkite Tyrant is though. Cool. So you have Bazaar Trader, and then you take one of their artifacts, and then you tap Bazaar Trader, giving someone else that artifact and taking a better artifact that's not a mana artifact. I think those are hilarious interactions that someone's got to do. I'm not, because I'm not an artifact guy. But still, I think this card is funny. I think it's also just kind of fine, right? Like in a red artifact deck, or even just in a red big mana deck, right? Like, let's say you're playing in a pot of 4 people and 2 of them play Soul Rings. Maybe you're the one that plays Soul Ring, right? So on your turn 2, you play Treasure Nabber, right? Your opponent's not going to want to play Soul Ring, because then on 3 you could have 7 mana. That's like huge. That's insane. So I think this card is fine, especially in a meta where a lot of people are playing these really low cost artifacts. This is a decent disincentive, yeah, to not accelerating out that much. So I think it's cool. Tanos, Urza's Apprentice, blue and red for a 1/3 with haste. Pay blue and red and tap it to copy target activated or triggered ability you control from an artifact source. You may choose new targets. That's cool. One, we have a Tanos card finally. That's just awesome. I love Blast from the Past. It is similar to Kurkesh in that you can copy things. It's different. I think Kurkesh is probably in the source. Yeah. It's different because Kurkesh only hits activated abilities, and this hits triggered as well, which is cool. But you do have to tap him, which means you can't do it a ton, right? Kurkesh, it's based on the amount of mana you have. So you can do Kurkesh a lot, with a lot of different artifacts. But with Tanos, you can only do it once. And I think that's fair. He does cost less. He does hit triggered abilities as well, where Kurkesh doesn't. So it's a decent trade-off. You're also getting access to blue. So I think it's a plus and minus. But I think this card is going to be another contender for an artifact planeswalker for blue-red. I'm not entirely sure. Like, obviously, you're going to be wanting like really big triggers. I'm not an artifact guy. I can't think of any. all I can think of is like Lux Cannon or something. I don't know. There's probably an artifact. There has to be an artifact that gives you like a second turn. So you can abuse stuff like that. But yeah, I think I don't have a ton to talk about this card. I think it's a contender, but I don't think it's a very high one for artifact commander, just because it has to tap. Echo Storm, horrifying card, utterly horrifying. 3 blue or 3 dub blue. For it's sorcery. When you cast a spell, copy it. For each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. It's good that they said from the command zone. You may choose new targets for the copies. Create a token that's a copy of target artifact. You don't have to be playing an artifact deck for this card to be decent, because of how many good artifacts there are in Commander. If you are playing an artifact deck, this card is decent. Even if you play your Commander only twice, you get to copy your best artifact. Right. 5 mana for 2 of your best artifact is probably fine. Again, I don't think this is going to be a staple. I think it's going to be in one of those niche decks or in a meta in which artifacts are rampant, especially like very powerful, strong ones. But I think it's a cool card. I think it's a nice design. I like the nod to Storm. Yeah, I think they balance this card correctly. I think it's fine at 5. Vidalcan Humiliator. I'm not gonna lie, I should call these things Vatican. Because I thought the L was silent. But Vidalcan Humiliator is 3 and a blue for a 3/4 wizard with Metalcraft. Cool. I like that they're willing to bring back one-off abilities. Whenever this attacks, if you control 3 or more artifacts, creatures your opponents control lose all abilities and have base power and toughness of 1/1 until end of turn. So at first when I saw this card, I was thinking to myself, isn't that a white ability? And then I did remember that blue does have a lot of like minus power abilities. So I think this is more of a bend. I don't think this is like a color break or anything like that. Blue does like turn things to frog and stuff like that. It's often paired with green, but I think it overlaps in blue's wheelhouse enough. You're not removing the creatures, you're just making them kind of bad. And notably, this happens before like they choose to block, which is good. Obviously, like you would see the trick on the card because it has to attack. But I think this card's probably fair. It also is just a decent way to like for blue to get around pesky creatures that are on the field, while still forcing them to play a very specific deck. Notably, that's essentially all I have to say about the mechanics of the card. I'm a dumb Forthos, so I'm going to talk about the art. Notably, this is on Mirrodin. I'm wondering if the thing in the background is meant to be a Phyrexianized creature. It looks like a Rancor to me. If anyone knows what this creature is supposed to be from Mirrodin, let me know. It looks familiar, but I didn't play enough original Mirrodin, and I was too focused on Phyrexians in New Phyrexia, that I'm not entirely sure what that creature is. So if you know what it is, let me know. I think Humiliate is a good card. It's a little bit of a bend, but it's fine. Enchanter's Bane. This card is so good. And the reason I say it's so good is because it's a red response to enchantments, not a red answer. Red should not be allowed to remove enchantments, and this is not something that technically removes enchantments. You have to choose, as the enchantment player, do I keep my enchantments and hurt myself, or do I get rid of my enchantments? So I really like this on flavor, on brand, red answer to enchantments. Now all we need is a black response to enchantments and artifacts, and that'll be great. So this is a 1 and a red enchantment, hilariously. At the beginning of your end step, target enchantment deals damage equal to its converted mana cost to its controller, unless that player sacrifices it. So if you're playing a relatively aggressive red deck, and your opponent has... Actually, I think that even works with... Oh yeah, so even if your opponent has like Leyline of Sanctity, you're targeting the Leyline, not your opponent. So if you need to get around that Leyline, you can just target that, and either they're going to dome themselves for 4 every turn, or they're going to finally get rid of that enchantment, and you can start doming them with your burn spells. Or if you're playing a creature deck in red, you can target their propaganda effects, you know, their sphere of safeties. Maybe someone has an enchantment like O-ringing one of your bombs, right? You can start just dealing damage. And yes, this is technically a low amount of damage per hit, but the incremental damage adds up in a game that's probably going to last a few turns if you're playing, like, not in a super competitive environment. So I really like this card. I think it's great. Loyal Drake. Lieutenant is back, which is cool. This is essentially a Windrake, right? It's 2 and a blue for a flying 2/2. So it's a Windrake with upside, which is always nice. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, draw a card. I like cards that incentivize people playing their commanders. I really like when commanders are an integral part of the game, because that's kind of the point of the format. And it's, you know, it's on brand. You draw a card. Not much more to say about it. I think it's cool. I think it's a cool, fun card. It's probably too weak to be a staple, but I can see it slotting into blue decks just fine. It replaces itself, and it's a flyer. Last but not least, I think this is Portuguese. I don't think it's Spanish. Because I know one Romance language, French, I'm able to more or less understand like Spanish and Italian, but Romanian and Portuguese, I feel are like one more step removed, and they're harder for me to understand. So I think this is Portuguese. If this is Spanish, let me know. Ancient Stone Idol for a 10 generic cost, 12/12, cool. With flash, cool. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each attacking creature, even cooler. Trample, sure, that's a weird place. I feel like Trample should be like right next to flash, but eh. When it dies, create a 6/2 colorless construct creature token with Trample. It's a cool card. If you're getting attacked, you flash in this. You're like, no, you kill like probably their biggest creature, right? This is a 12/12. It only dies to like other Eldrazi or something like that. And I think Crows and Cloudscapers are 13/13. So, and then when it dies, you get another dude that can block really well. I think this card is awesome. I don't have a ton to say about it. I'm like a Timmy Spike at heart. So I like big dumb things, and this is a big dumb thing. it's a good big dumb thing too. Play this alongside like Darksteel Darksteel Forge, something like that. I think it's Darksteel Forge. To just make them indestructible. Is it Crows and Cloudscaper? No, it's not. To make it indestructible, and you just got a big dude. But I don't know. I think it's cool. This is probably like the least stapley of the cards I've talked about today, but it's still a cool, fun card. Disincentivizes attacks. Can be played in a monocolored deck as just another big dude to ramp out into with your mana rocks. It's cool. I like it. I mean, that's pretty much it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed my rambling discussion about the Commander 2018 cards. Let me know what Commander deck you are looking forward to playing with the most out of these 4. Let me know if there was anything that I was super wrong about, and something I called niche was actually going to be the next staple, or something I called a staple is actually trash. I would like to know your opinions. So let me know. And if you like the video, go ahead and tap that like button, add a subscription to your mana pool, and cast a comment to the comment section down below. And until next time, all will be one.